In today's video, we're going to be covering the 7 foods that make your eczema worse, and these are foods that you're definitely going to want to avoid until you get to the root cause and fix whatever digestive issues you have that aren't allowing you to tolerate these foods. So today's agenda, we're going to be talking about the difference between food allergies versus food sensitivities and intolerances. We're going to talk about the 7 foods to avoid at all costs, and stick around because I'm going to throw in a bonus of the drink of death, the drink that you should definitely avoid 100% if you want to start healing your body. So for me in my eczema journey, I went through the ringer. When I was 5, I had eczema and warts, got put on the creams, ended up becoming a nurse, didn't have any eczema at that period of my life. And then as I was working as a nurse in the ICU, my eczema from childhood started to slowly creep back in, and you can see on the photo on the right, it was really bad. I had a horrible case. I had all these doctors, dermatologists telling me that this was something I was going to have for the rest of my life. And despite being a nurse and having all these really high level medical practitioners around me, nobody could give me any answers. And one day I decided to take matters into my own hands, and I was actually a patient of Kaiser at that time. And I told my dermatologist, like, please, can you get me in touch with an allergy specialist so I can start looking at if I have any allergies to food. They told me that food and eczema had nothing to do with each other. And the interesting thing for me when I went through nursing school is, like, we're told that Hippocrates used to say, let food be thy medicine and medicine be thy food. And so then I had all these doctors telling me that food and disease had nothing to do with each other. And I started to really think about this. And I was like, this doesn't make any sense. So to understand how food can be causing issues related to eczema, we have to understand the difference between sensitivities and allergies. A lot of people that I work with, the clients that have skin disease, they come to me and they say, I think I'm allergic to this food. The thing is, if you're allergic to a certain type of food, for example, peanuts, you will have an anaphylactic response. So what usually happens is this an immune response. Some people can be allergic to strawberries or nuts. They eat the food and their throat starts to close up. They have difficulty breathing. They have a loss of consciousness and even death. And so they have to stab themselves, usually with an EpiPen, which has epinephrine in it, in order to get their body and their respiratory system to open back up so that they can survive, right? So related to eczema is usually a secondary condition, and there's a root cause that's causing the skin to flare up. When we have skin disease, it's usually because there's a lot of things going on inside the body that have been bombarded and hurt over time. And if that happens long enough, it starts to show on the skin. So what most of the clients that we work with have is usually a food sensitivity. So this is usually an adverse reaction to food that occurs in the digestive tract. And this is oftentimes uncomfortable and symptomatic. We have a lot of people who come to us who have gut issues, improper bowel movements, sometimes diarrhea, sometimes constipation, pain in the digestive tract, and then of course the skin issues. So as we're talking about food, I put together this presentation to give you the top 7 foods that I found removing helped me significantly and has also helped clients. Now, something I want to tell you is when you're removing foods from your diet, you don't necessarily need to think, I really love this food, I can never eat it again. I want you to think, if I remove this, it will allow me to heal whatever is inflamed. And maybe in the future, I will be able to consume that food that I really liked. But you will have to change your habits, and you will have to change how you view your health. Because if you're eating pizza every single day and it's causing issues for you, and you don't want to cut out the pizza, then you have a problem. And it's either the pizza or the skin disease, right? So keep that in mind. Food number 1, this first food, it's a silent killer. It causes a lot of problems for people, and surprisingly enough, there are a lot of people that still don't know about it. When I used to go out and eat at restaurants, I used to go to tons of different restaurants because I didn't know that most restaurants cooked food with this specific food. If you guys can take a guess, go ahead. and that food is seed oils. So seed oils are high in polyunsaturated fats, uh, PUFAs, polyunsaturated fatty acids. And these are in everything. If you look at the farming industry now, there's huge companies that are buying up all this land and they're just essentially making seed oils out of the crops. They're stripping the land of all of its nutrients and they're just making these heavily processed oils that aren't good for the human body. They cause massive inflammation and they're put in everything. And the issue with the restaurant industry is most restaurant owners don't care as much about quality as they care about cutting costs. So they'll buy massive quantities of vegetable oil in various forms and they'll put it in your food, and you have this happening at very healthy restaurants too. Like it looks like their food's good and they're still cooking in vegetable oil. So as you can see with this photo over here on the right, the types of vegetable oils to avoid. Margarine, absolutely avoid that. That was developed as an alternative to butter, so they put it into market so that they created a new product and they said, oh yeah, butter's causing heart disease, it's a saturated fat. So they give you this really crappy product that wasn't a byproduct of Mother Nature. There was no process. There was no process where you took it from an animal and made it in your home. It's made in a product line, and they mass produce it and sell it to the public, and then they publish false articles with false claims about how butter's killing you and margarine is the new thing. So margarine, completely avoid. Then you have canola oil, cottonseed oil, safflower oil, soybean oil, corn oil, grapeseed oil, rice bran oil, sunflower oil. I'm beginning to sound like Bubba Gump. Food number 2, this next food might surprise you because it is a staple worldwide in many places, but it can be a major trigger for eczema because it causes inflammation. I used to put this on everything. I used to put it on my burgers. I used to drink it. And the crazy thing about this type of food is it actually has an opioid response, so it's very addictive. Take a guess. This food is dairy. So you've got milk, yogurt, cheese, butter, whey, protein powders. This is just it's a food that causes inflammation for a lot of people. If you look at how dairy is produced in this day and age, there's pasteurization products there, or a pasteurization process that occurs, and essentially pasteurization is removing all of the fat, all of the enzymes, all the probiotics and the nutrients from milk to get rid of the bacteria. But the interesting thing is there was a marketer in the past who created a machine. It was a pasteurization machine, and he told different villagers and different towns, he would go travel to them and he'd say, hey, the town over here is getting sick and a bunch of people are dying from the milk not being processed properly. I have a pasteurization machine. This was just created to help prevent this. And he sold it to everyone and made tons of money. And now we have this massive pasteurization process. So with that being said, even if you were to get your milk and like kefir and stuff like that from a high quality source, at the end of the day, if you're going to consume any dairy products, make sure it's highest quality possible. But for the clients I've worked with, I highly recommend removing dairy. I actually don't consume dairy anymore at all. I have a little bit of goat cheese here and there, but other than that, cutting dairy out of my life has helped significantly, and it's a big change. I know it's hard because it's in everything, but in this part of your journey, if you're just getting started, just cutting things out when you can is the most important thing. Like instead of putting a bunch of cheese on your food with seed oils, choose a different alternative when you can. Food number 3, this is a controversial food that I think everyone in the US should stop eating because it has a lot of chemicals in it and it causes a lot of havoc on a lot of people. And when I was younger, I think around 14, I stopped at this pizza shop that we used to have in our town. I grew up in a pretty small town. And this pizza shop had the best pizzas ever. They had like all different types of foods. If you wanted a specific pizza, they could throw all different type of toppings on and you got to choose what you wanted. So you could make your own pizza. I love this place. There was this guy I was sitting next to while I was waiting for the order to bring back to my mom. And this guy looks at the menu and he goes, what a load of crap. And he starts talking about an ingredient that they had removed in the crust of the pizza. Take a guess of what that is. It is gluten. So gluten is a structural protein naturally found in certain grains like wheat, barley, rye, oats, and gluten has been shown to be very high inflammatory for a lot of people. And I think there's more than just the gluten. It's one, the quality of the food that we have in the United States and other countries that are similar to the US. There's no nutrients in our food anymore, and the quality is just gone. Plus, big agro industry sprays a lot of our crops with glyphosate and atrazine. These are two herbicides that completely destroy the gut. So if you were to go to Italy and you were to consume their food, oftentimes people with issues with gluten don't have issues there. And it's because of the quality. But in the US, gluten is a massive issue, and I would avoid it at all costs. Just be wary that there are certain types of food in the grocery store that say they're gluten-free and they're still not healthy. So you do have to be wary when you're reading labels, like, oh yeah, this says it's gluten-free, it must be healthy. A lot of the companies that are actually in the business of selling gluten products and really crappy agricultural products that people go and buy in the masses, they also are starting to put organic labels and gluten-free labels on food because they have the money to do so, because it's a business. Food number 4. This food is found in nearly everything that you form addictions to. When I moved to Colombia after quitting my job as a nurse, I found out I had candida. So on top of my eczema, I had candida. It was causing other types of skin issues and rashes. And ultimately, there was one big food that I was consuming that was causing a massive yeast overgrowth. Take a guess. Sugar. So sugar is a wild food, and I don't mean that literally. I mean it wild in terms of what it does to people. If you think about our ancestors and all of the DNA and genetic coding that we have from how our ancestors used to live compared to today, our bodies are really still similar in many aspects. We just have grocery stores now. We have a third party that gets the food for us and then puts it in a package. Now, the issue with this is, like, if you look at certain tribes like the Maasai in Africa, I can't remember, I think it's Kenya, and there's another country that they're in. They're a tribe that's still hunter-gatherer, and essentially they still hunt monkeys and baboons and other animals, and they eat honey, they drink cow blood, they consume milk, and they consume meat. And the only sugar that they're really getting is from the honey. But if you look at them, they're not eating honey every day. It's really interesting. Now, in a lot of communities, you have people, they're consuming honey every day saying it's a superfood. Well, it still has sugar in it, and fruit still has sugar in it. And so a lot of people, they'll say, oh yeah, well, I'm eating fruit, I'm super healthy. Well, yeah, fruit has natural sugar. So a lot of people say, you're eating fruit. And they go, yeah, but it's natural. They go, yeah, but it's still sugar. So what ends up happening is when you consume refined sugar or you consume fructose from fruit, the body's natural process of processing what just went into your system is the sugar comes into your body, the pancreas releases insulin. Insulin essentially is the hormone that is going to allow you to take the sugar and use it as a fuel source. What ends up happening for a lot of people, they consume way too much sugar, over 15 grams per day. Most people are consuming like 100, 200. And what ends up happening is it bombards your pancreas, it bombards your spleen, it bombards your liver, and your body's natural processes aren't able to cope. And what ends up happening is that small intestines start to develop bacterial overgrowths, yeast overgrowths. Parasites can begin to take hold in your system and grow. And your immune system takes a massive hit, which allows these things to start growing. So the biggest takeaway with this slide is that when you consume over 15 grams of sugar per day, you are going to limit your immune system over time. And that's what happened to me. I thought I was pretty healthy, but I was consuming way more sugar than I should have been. And it was actually masking my my pain. So instead of going into the pain and being able to heal myself, I would consume sugar, and then it caused way more issues. Food number 5. This is a breakfast favorite for everyone, just not those with eczema. This is my favorite food of all time. I still eat this every day. It can be an issue for some people. So take a guess at what this is. Eggs. So for a little more than 25% of eczema sufferers, eggs are an issue. The interesting thing is, for a lot of people, egg whites are the issue. So what you can try for yourself is you can break the eggshell, flip it back and forth until you have the whites on one side and the yolk by itself. And then you can make omelets, you can make food out of just the yolk, and you can see, does my body react to this? And if not, then you can continue to eat the eggs. I will say this, if you don't cut eggs out completely, at least make sure you understand quality. You have conventional eggs, you have vegetarian fed eggs, chickens, I'm talking about conventional eggs, vegetarian fed chickens, cage-free chickens, free-range, organic, pasture-raised. You need to understand that all of these terms mean something different. So a lot of people think, oh, I'm buying from a cage-free chicken. Well, oftentimes they're still commonly packed into a facility. What you really want is pasture-raised, and this is like, you want to go find a farmer that has chickens that are out on a range and they're eating grass, and they're not being fed a bunch of grain and a bunch of crap, and they're not being given antibiotics. You can see the difference in this picture of a pasture-raised chicken egg versus a cage-free. The yolk should be really dark orange. The number one thing I wish I had when I was going through skin disease and eczema was a community of people who had already figured out the problem, who could guide me through the steps and the processes needed in order to heal myself naturally. And lucky for you, if you are interested in a community like this, we actually have a school community where you can come in and learn education related to skin disease for a fraction of the price of what you're going to be paying doctors and all different types of practitioners in the future. So you can learn for yourself, heal for yourself, and be able to feel better a lot quicker without having to take pharmaceuticals for the rest of your life. So if you're interested in that, click on the description below, and I will see you in the community. Food number 6, this is an Asian favorite. The interesting thing about this is, for the Asian population, they actually have genes that allow them to process this food more easily. So if you're Asian, keep that in mind. For me, I used to have these college escapades. I went to a junior college, and I lived in the dorms there in California. And what ended up happening was they would give us about a $60 credit per month to go to these restaurants. And there was, all my friends would use their card every single day, and then oftentimes like pay the rest of the food that they were eating with their parents' money. I had to grind myself. I didn't receive a bunch of money from my parents for college. I had to take out loans. And so what I did was every week I would work pretty hard, and then I would save all my credits, and I would go to the sushi restaurant, and I would just eat as much as possible. And that was like my celebration. So I used to always consume one of these foods that is on the list. And I didn't realize until much later how bad it could actually be on the body. Take a guess at what this food is. It's soy. So soy products, these contain phytoestrogens. There's a lot of arguments online about, like, is this an estrogenic? An estrogenic is something that causes your estrogen processes in the body, the hormones that make estrogen, to fire off, right? And if you read the book by Dr. Anthony J, it's called Estrogeneration. It goes into all the different foods and different types of foods that are estrogenic. Soy is one of those. Oftentimes, soy is sprayed with the herbicides like glyphosate and atrazine that we want to avoid. And of course, with that being said, quality always matters. So if you can get really high quality soy products, which is very hard to do in the US, I believe if you're living in Japan or another Asian country, it's going to be way easier to get actual high quality soy food. But for the most part, the soy milks and all the soy cheeses that are sold in the US are all coming from the same source. So you want to be very wary. Food number 7. This food is used probably the most in Mexico. It's all over the place. Um, there was a client that I had. He had these massive rashes on his butt and around his genital region, and he could not get rid of them. He was trying everything, changing his diet, all of these different things. And we cut out one of these foods, and the problem went away. So take a guess. Tomatoes. There is a book by Stephen Gundry called The Plant Paradox, and this goes into lectins. Lectins are essentially a plant defense mechanism. So a lectin is found within certain plants. For example, potatoes, tomatoes, eggplants. These have lectins in them. So when someone consumes them, it actually fires off a defense mechanism from the plant that makes your body inflamed. And it causes inflammation in the digestive tract. The reason that the plants have this is to stop animals and humans from eating them. And so an interesting thing for a lot of people is they can cut out lectin-rich food and they can start to have decreased inflammation in their digestive tract. Now, the bonus that I told you about in the beginning is the drink of death. And this is actually a lectin-rich food as well. It is essentially a bean, okay? So this one addiction actually completely destroyed my guts. I avoided it like the plague when I was younger, and then when I got into the workforce, I started drinking it. And one of the biggest chains in the world sells this product. Take a guess of what the drink of death is. Coffee. So this is really hard for people to come to terms with. I have a whole nother video on this topic. So after this, go check it out. But coffee is lectin rich. Coffee comes from a bean. And essentially when you drink coffee every day, it inflames your digestive tract. So it's highly acidic. And over time, I've seen a lot of clients, myself included, they drink way too much coffee, and the coffee just causes massive issues for them. So the pictures I have here are pretty funny. If you look back on the Homer's Odyssey, there were these mystical figures called sirens. And sirens had wings, but they were kind of like, almost like a mermaid figure. And I believe Homer had his men tie himself to the post of the boat so that he wouldn't get called in and drowned by the sirens. So essentially what the sirens do is they pull people off their course. And there's a lot of myths and fables regarding mermaids pulling sailors off with their seductive temptation and killing them. Believe it or not, myths are around to paint a picture of how society works. And the interesting thing about Starbucks, the biggest coffee company in the world, is that their original logo, and their logo now, is a mermaid. Also, some of them call it the siren. And I noticed this one day because I cut coffee out of my diet and my life has never been better. I'm less anxious. I'm more mindful. I'm more grounded. I have far less ADHD. My ADHD is pretty much gone away completely. And I attribute a lot of this to cutting coffee out of my diet and my lifestyle. And the interesting thing is there's a Starbucks on every corner. And why are so many people addicted to coffee? Well, coffee is the substance that employers give their employees for free in the break room in order to keep them alert and continuing to work, even though they may not want to be there. So what usually happens for a lot of the people I work with is they cut coffee out and they start having realizations of like, I can't actually work this much. This is a lot of work. Sitting at a desk for 8 to 10 hours a day, doing the same mundane task is not actually what I want to be doing. And the only way that they get through the day is by drinking the coffee. So when we cut the coffee out of the diet, a lot of times people get faced with the hard decision of like, oh yeah, I can't keep living like this, and they have to make changes in their life. So I have a whole nother video on this topic if you want to go deep on all of the physiological symptoms that coffee actually causes, that causes issues for people with skin disease and in people in general. So in summary, we talked about sensitivities versus allergies. If you have a skin condition, you likely have a sensitivity to food going on. The big seven that we talked about: seed oils, dairy, gluten, sugar, eggs, soy, tomatoes. And then finally, the bonus, coffee. If you guys are interested in restoring your digestive system, this is ultimately one of the biggest things that helps people with eczema heal naturally without having to take pharmaceuticals for the rest of their life, is by healing the digestive tract and the gut. So if you're interested in us supporting you to fix your sensitivities, you can join us at school.com/skinsavers for free education. Awesome, guys. Thanks so much. I'll see you in the next one.